Hi, I'm Kathleen Murphy, and welcome to Murf+E Unfiltered, Zero BS Biz Talk. I'm here today with my co-host, Eliot Grossman. How are you, Eliot?
Doing great, Murph. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Trying to stay cool these days. A little warm out there,
but this is good.
I'm not complaining because
It's summer. It's supposed to be warm.
That's right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Well, today I'm excited about this particular topic because it's a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart. It's called Always Be Learning, or ABL, just for short. And I was thinking about what particular topic I wanted to bring forward, and this one caught my attention as an article that I had written a little while ago. And it is widely appealing to so many different people. Everyone has to learn, and at some point in their life, or is learning from a very early age on. And so we're going to talk about some of the dynamics as it relates to always be learning, and this can be in the context of professionally or personally, or a mixture of both, just to kind of set the tone for what we're going to be talking about today. And the overview for this particular show is someone recently asked me about what it was like to be successful. What I told them wasn't something that they expected to hear, and in fact, I told them that I didn't consider myself to be successful. And they were actually surprised by my response as I told them that my definition of success is to always be learning. And so you could imagine maybe the surprise look that they had on their face, but they stopped to pause and think about this for a little while, and came back with a response that said, you know, that makes sense. I really like that definition of success. That's something that everyone can try to aspire to and achieve. Now, one of the things that I have only shared most recently with people was the fact that school was never really fun for me. And the reason being was because I didn't know at the time, but that I was dyslexic. So I had challenges to having to learn, and that wasn't caught, and I wasn't given the right amount of support in order to maybe make it more fun or make it a little bit easier. But I always admired people that always talked about how they love school, they love learning. I always imagined, what must that be like? I always thought that was some kind of a fantasy world, if you will. And what it like caused me to think about back when I was younger was to, upon reflection, think about, I had to figure out how to learn in my own way, since nobody was instructing me how to go about doing that, and it took a long time to do that.
I'm sure it did.
And when I was growing up, it required me to learn a lot of different topics that I was also not interested in, which I found that was obviously more challenging. What I learned when I got older was that there's this dopamine effect when you're learning about something that's interesting to you that allows you to remember the information. More so than if that dopamine isn't present. So if you're not interested in a subject, poof, it's probably going to go away.
Sure.
So what about you? Did you enjoy school? Were you one of those people that I didn't know
Well, I love
that enjoyed school?
Yeah, I love school for the social aspect.
Yes, of course.
Right,
yes.
but other than that, did I enjoy it? No, I didn't enjoy it.
Not academically.
No, because it was boring to me. In my way of learning, you had to learn different ways and different avenues in order to retain and gain. Well, for me, my avenue was simply just memorize. I had a very, very good memory.
Okay.
As soon as the
Makes
test
sense.
was over, gone. Terrible way to learn, because I'm not learning anything.
It's like random access memory.
When I was young, right, that's all it was. I didn't remember anything.
Right,
Nothing. I remembered nothing, and I learned how to memorize.
So memorization was your preferred method for learning. Do you think that people, they take a long time to figure out, or do you even think that they consider methods of how they learn, or is this just something that people naturally kind of go about their learning process and don't give it any thought?
I would like to think that people actually want to learn. For me, it's not that I didn't want to learn. I was just caught up in so many other things, and I just said it's easier for me to memorize.
Sure.
And so it was easier for me to get through until college.
Right.
And then you actually had to learn.
So,
But with that said, I don't know. It was learned. It's probably why I didn't do as well in school. Right? I didn't put my mind to it in college.
was it important to you to do well in school? Maybe not. I mean,
It
I
was
wasn't inspired by grades.
Yeah, it was important for me to get through.
Okay.
I was not.
It's a means to an
I,
end.
I was not driven to be magna cum laude. I wasn't worried about getting a 4.0 because I knew that wasn't happening. I wanted to make sure I had a very good time, which I did, and I wanted to make sure that I got through. I was paying for school, so I was going to make sure I got through, and you go from there.
There you go. Exactly.
Well, I mean, you must, dealing with what you dealt with being dyslexic and all, a preferred learning style.
Yes.
Right? And how did you figure it out? Because that's not easy. Because back when we were growing up, those things weren't caught as often. There wasn't as much testing, if any testing.
And
back then.
let's face it, there weren't a lot of people talking about it. There wasn't a lot of access to being able to research if there
Sure.
are other ways to figure out how to go about learning. So what I did figure out, and there was a name eventually applied to it that I learned, which is that I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I'm a hands-on learner. I'm also a visual learner, so the combination of the two is the learning style that really works for me.
But don't you think most people are hands-on? If we can touch it, see it, feel it, visual.
Yes.
As humans,
Yes.
we're thankful we can see and touch and feel. It makes it easier to learn and understand.
Oh, without
and that
a
must
doubt.
have helped you you needed to be able to see that and do it.
It did, but if there was memorization that was required, that wasn't going to go over so well for me. So I had to figure out different ways of making each process of what I had to learn be kinesthetic. An example of that would have been when I was in an advanced biology class. I asked the teacher if I could take the pig home when we were doing a dissection project, and they kind of looked at me funny and they said, "Are you sure?" And so what I did is I took the pig home and I took these little pins, and then I created little labels and labeled each of the different elements associated with that pig so that I could remember and touch and see and know where the elements inside that pig were and could name it. So when the test came up and it asked about certain things, I just kind of go back to my mind and visually, oh, I knew where that is.
Okay, so let's fast forward 25 years, and now we're in a different age and a different world. How do we're not dissecting pigs. When we worked together, we weren't dissecting pigs. Though at times we felt like we were, right? How did you take the challenges and your way of learning to how we did things?
So that's an excellent question. Fast forward to working in the technology world and being in marketing and having to understand really complex information from engineers that were going to be sharing information with me that I was going to then have to put into a writing or communication format to then queue it up for the sales teams to be able to then go out to talk about it and for marketing to be able to market it. And what I did in that era of learning was I called upon my ability to use the kinesthetic and the visual learning by asking the engineers to whiteboard for me what it was that they built and what it was that I had to market. And I would just ask them a series of questions and they would basically develop a picture for me, which was fantastic. So then I basically had something that I could visually see and they could move it around. So it was sort of kinesthetic, if you will, not completely. But that was the way that I mastered being able to handle my bringing in my preferred learning style to be able to be successful and always be learning and to have it kind of be fun.
Sure.
So it got to be sort of the running joke that, okay, we got a new product that we're launching. All right, cue up the whiteboards because let's teach Kathy and her team how to communicate this information and allow them to ask us questions about it because all the information was in their minds and that wasn't going to do me any good. And hearing it, that wasn't going to work. By just simply listening, that wasn't going to be in my favor.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of an experience that you've had, perhaps with others, have you had to share with others your method of how you go about learning? We both have kids. Was that something that you brought into
Yeah,
their
probably not
worlds?
as much with the kids, but probably more professionally for me
Sure.
when I realized I got into world, especially when I get into the software technology world.
Yes.
I was like, okay, I'm lost, right? Because all of a
Time
sudden,
out, people.
memorizing and learning, and I had to learn differently, right? We all learn different ways. So what I did, very similar to you, is I found really smart people that I thought were kind of fun to hang out with.
Sure.
Yourself and other people.
Thank you.
On our teams. And I picked their brains.
Oh.
Not to embarrass myself in front of my team when I
Sure.
was managing
Right.
and do things, because, you know, I always said I don't need to be the smartest person on my team. I just need to make sure I can manage and run and understand what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And for me, it was about learning that way. And, you know, I picked a few guys on our team when we worked together. Different guys not on my team that worked close to me that were willing to share everything.
Right.
And then when I was out and about, everybody was way ahead of me, right, in this world.
Oh.
I was a late addition to the space.
Sure.
And everybody was ahead of me. So I just needed certain tidbits
Yes.
that gave me enough knowledge that I could actually speak somewhat intelligently.
And to be dangerous,
That's all.
as they say, right?
I just needed to be dangerous to make sure I hired good people that were far more advanced than I was.
Absolutely,
Yep.
and
Yep.
partnering with somebody. So in terms of a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, how would you rate the importance of the concept of always be learning? Is that something that you've considered or thought about?
Well, of course, right? I think about school, back when I was in school, not even college. I mean, if I think about it now, but when I was younger in school, I was like, all right, I don't need to do this.
Sure.
I only did it so we could go to recess.
As a means
Right,
to an
go
end.
hang out with our buddies, right? Get off
Right.
campus for lunch, whatever it may be. It was a 1 back then for me.
It was a 1
Sure, back
at the
then.
time. Sure.
Then as I progressed, and obviously now it's a 10, right? I love learning. I love learning new things. I learn in my own way. I listen a lot more. I talk a lot. So now I try to talk less and listen a lot more, right? We've said this probably a million times, right? God gave us 2 ears, 2 ears, 1 mouth, less
That's right.
talking, more listening.
That's
and,
right.
now I try to listen more, and not just to regurgitate information,
But to retain it.
but to retain it and understand it, and then be able to take it to the next level.
I love it.
You know?
So has anyone ever said to you that they wish they could just kind of fast forward in time and get to a mastery level with skipping the process of going through the school of hard knocks, of doing all the memorization and doing whatever it takes in order to get to the point where they understand information at a level that they want to be at, which is going to take them a lot longer than they are giving it credit. They just want to go from, I just graduated from college, to I want 10 years of experience within the next week to be in my brain, and I can do that.
Yeah, of course, right? Doesn't everybody always say, if you know now, know then what you know now, you'd be a lot more dangerous.
Absolutely.
Right? But with that, what does that bring you? That brings you called experience and wisdom. And we try to say that, and I try to say that to my kids now. A daughter just graduated college. I'm always like, all right, relax. I know you want to do this, but you need to get A, B before you get to C.
That's right.
I don't think it's any different in that world. I really don't. Well, what about you? I mean, you've got to have suggestions to, this is what you do now. This is what you do for a living. This is not just a hobby.
Right.
This is what you do for a living.
That's true.
To embrace, how do you help people with your interviews and what you're doing in your concept to help people kind of always be learning?
Right. Well, so I coach people basically to be the best version of themselves, if you will, ultimately to motivate them and to have them figure out what they're excellent at doing to get them to a whole new level of being able to leverage that information. So what I do in terms of sharing tips with people is I'll share some tips that I regularly am
It's the best part of the show,
Yeah,
Murf.
well, thank you.
You sharing your tips.
regularly giving out to other people that
Right.
hoping that they can benefit from. So
Yep.
I really like this one because this is something that I find a lot of people are guilty of, and people are going to be shaking their heads on this one, but because they're going to either find that this is themselves doing this, or they know somebody that does this quite frequently. And it's about those people that are always talking about somebody else, and not in a good way. They're basically gossiping. But when they continuously are consuming new information, instead, they can then share this information with others, and those others can benefit from this information, being, quote unquote, in air quotes, that person that's gossiping about others and only talking about others and not interesting information.
Sure.
And so that's tip number one. The second one is I tell people to challenge themselves to learn about topics that perhaps they don't understand and embrace them, to really go out there and to gain an entirely new perspective, perhaps to serve as a platform to help inform them for the rest of their life. For example, perhaps learn about a different culture, to be able to appreciate the differences and similarities that you're going to discover that you probably have with other people that you didn't know about had you not invested that time. And it is an investment with learning in ourselves. I want to kind of underscore that. And whenever possible, and hopefully there'll be more opportunities to do this after we fully get through the pandemic, is to be able to get out there to travel. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to some exotic place like Bali to be able to learn from your travel experiences, but getting out there and interacting with other people in other places around your own country, your own state potentially, but if you can be exotic and go somewhere, awesome. But this also serves as a really good way of helping you to always be learning, quite frankly.
Sure.
And then what about you, Eliot? Are there some tips that you have that would encourage somebody to always be learning?
Yeah, so I always say I'm a simple man. And for me to keep it that way and break it down, where I always said it will never happen that I'm the smartest guy in the room. And I know that. You have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. You have to understand that. For me, again,
there's emotional intelligence also.
Yeah,
so there are
that's
different
fine.
levels of intelligence. I will toss that one in there because you have an exceptional level of emotional intelligence, which I think arguably is sometimes more important.
Well, I appreciate that. Getting back to your point, it was, for me, not being the smartest guy in the room when it came to the knowledge of the industry, the space, wherever we may go. I learned to quickly adapt, kind of stay in the background, engage in a different way, and be able to take that knowledge home, to be able to take that knowledge when I was traveling to my hotel room, look it up, do some reading, right? The internet's a wonderful thing,
Sure
right?
is.
We're able to get on and all of a sudden you become a whole lot smarter on your own time,
Yes.
right? I joke when I say I'll never be the smart. I'm not joking about that, but I also didn't want to be, and I hate this term, the dumbest person in the room.
Sure. Yeah,
I wanted to be
appreciate
able to speak intelligently to people, wanted my teams to respect a little bit of the knowledge that I had about the space, and and go from there. So, what about you? Yeah, I mean, do I have tips? I don't know. I mean, everybody learns in their own different ways.
They
right?
do.
Everybody, you have to take it one step at a time, whatever works for you.
Yes.
What are your tips? I know you got them.
So another tip is that I'm going to suggest to people that they're going to be multiple levels happier when they're learning about topics that we mentioned this earlier that they're going to be interested in. So the stage of life that you get to once you're past high school or college is that hopefully you'll be at a point in your life where you can start to take a look at learning things that are of interest to you that you don't have to learn. Like you were just saying, you would go back to your room and learn about things that were interest to you. So achieving a mastery level of learning about a topic, I think it can be inspirational and it can help you to become an expert in an area, and that can be a lot of fun. So I think that that's a tip to consider. Do you want to master something? I mean, it could be that you're mastering something that is only for your own purposes, but it could be that your mastery could help other
Absolutely.
people.
Sure.
Say, for example, becoming a doctor, maybe becoming a heart surgeon. That's certainly going to help a lot of other people, but you're going to have to spend a lot of years learning that trade, if you will,
Your
and those
mastery
skills.
and coaching and what you do now
That's
was
right.
not something when we worked together. I thought you had good insight, you gave great feedback, but you put a lot of time and effort into kind of mastering what you're doing now.
Oh,
which has enabled you to take it to another level.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah, that's right.
And you're still learning because you want to go to the next level.
Absolutely, always.
Sure.
I'm always in that same category. So I'd like to also encourage people to be that, what would be referred to again in air quotes, that interesting person,
Right.
someone that as a result of all the knowledge that they've amassed and acquired
Right.
is going to apply that to both their personal and professional life,
Right.
and not be categorized as the dull person or someone that, oh my gosh, I got stuck talking to that person over there. No one ever wants to be categorized in that way. So I think that that's really important to recognize as maybe something to aspire to
Right.
not be that dull person.
Right.
So hopefully that would allow somebody to reconsider maybe if they're not constantly challenging themselves to be taking in new information, to potentially consider if you're not doing that, potentially you could end up with that title, and that's not a title I don't think anybody
No, well,
wants.
absolutely, right? So when you're young and people are different and have different interests, and people tend to look when you're young and go, well, they're different people. We don't want to deal with them. Now I love learning from different people.
I agree.
I find them incredibly interesting.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's an approach for me that's quite different. But I think with that comes, with age comes that wisdom and experience becomes open-mindedness, right?
Without a doubt, without a doubt. And, one of the things that I was also considering was how long does it really take to figure out what your learning style is? I think it can be something that's developed kind of early on, but it can also be altered just based on the fact that your brain is maturing over the years and is expanding and allowing you to take in more information, maybe in different ways. And let's face it, also with the advent of technology, there are going to be coming online more ways for us to be able to learn information, and maybe we can't even imagine the numerous ways that potentially information could be going into our brain. It could be maybe we, just like with electric cars, we plug them in to charge up their battery. Maybe we plug something in to charge up our brain to, provide it with more information.
Murph,
Imagine
now you're talking
getting to
crazy.
that point someday.
Now you're talking crazy.
So I think that it's really important for people to, in my opinion, embrace the concept of always be learning. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really an investment that people need to consider making in themselves, because it does take time.
Sure it does.
We both know that, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think that if you consider some of the times in each of our lives where it seemed like probably as if it was the hardest thing that we were trying to master learning,
Sure.
I'm sure there's maybe a time or two in your life where you could say, oh my gosh, yes, I remember that time when fill in the blank, when it was exceptionally hard. But getting through that was incredibly rewarding once you did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the sales side, the famous term, and I've said it a million times, right? Fake it till you make it.
Yes.
Well, we would have to fake it when we worked together. I would fake it because I had a little bit of knowledge. I had to gain more knowledge.
Sure.
And,
right.
and that made me a little more credible, right?
Right.
I think that's an important word.
Well, I think that you can be gaining knowledge and be on a parallel track to also while you're establishing your credibility. So I don't think anybody always has the answers. There's no one person which is why we need to rely upon each other, because it's not possible for just one person to know everything.
Right.
And with that being said, I just want to say, I want people to take on the challenge of considering always be learning as something that is a method, or whatever you want to call it, a process to aspire to, because I think that it will serve them well for whatever stage in life, professionally or personally, that they're in. So I wanted to thank you today for this terrific topic. Of course, we'll be coming forward with lots of more topics. So thank you everybody today for joining us, and continue to check back in with us as we'll be bringing more fascinating news stories to you going forward. And thanks again. We'll see you later. Thanks, Eliot.
Thanks, Murph.